All right, so get this. We're going deep today on something you might not expect. Building company org charts.
Org charts.
Yeah, but on WordPress, of all things. You sent over this piece from Now Technology Systems, an Australian web design company.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Building a Company Org Chart on WordPress.
Yeah.
A step-by-step guide.
Catchy.
I know, right? And honestly, I was braced for like a super dry how-to,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But it actually digs into why these things matter.
Yeah.
Especially for Aussie businesses, which I thought was interesting.
For sure.
And get this, they even imply that you don't need to be a coding whiz to pull it off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was surprised too. So let's unpack this whole thing.
Okay, let's do it.
One thing that jumped out at me was how they really emphasized the why before even getting into WordPress.
The why.
Yeah, like why even bother?
Right.
They're saying it's not just some visual, it's a strategic tool.
Yeah, what struck me was how they were saying before you even touch WordPress, you need to understand why you're making it in the first place.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hold on, before we hand you the hammer and nails, let's talk about the blueprint for your house.
Aha, I like that.
And they make a strong case for these charts. I mean, I get that they help with knowing who's who, but they go deeper.
Absolutely. They point out how org charts can really boost communication, make operations smoother within a company, when everyone can see their role and who they report to. It's like a roadmap for decision making.
Makes sense.
And in Australia specifically, there are certain legal and safety rules tied to job roles in certain industries.
Oh, really?
So a clear org chart helps companies stay compliant.
Okay. So there's a legal angle too.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, I'll admit, when I first heard WordPress and org chart together, I pictured lines of code scrolling down my screen. But the article makes it sound almost enjoyable.
Yeah, and that's the magic of WordPress plugins.
Plugins?
Yeah, think of them as little add-ons that give your website superpowers.
Okay.
And for org charts, they've got some really user-friendly ones.
Right.
Like WP org chart.
Okay.
And simple org chart. Easy starting points.
So for our listener who's maybe itching to get hands-on, the article has this 5-step process.
5 steps.
And it really doesn't sound intimidating at all.
No.
So walk us through these steps. What's the first thing our listener needs to do?
Well, first, of course, you got to install the WordPress plugin.
Okay, so step 1, install the plugin.
But even this step, as straightforward as it sounds...
Yeah, what kind of nuances are we talking about here? If it's just clicking a button, what's there to really dive into?
Well, it's not just clicking a button,
Right.
You have to choose the right plugin first.
Oh, I see.
And they give you some advice on how to evaluate the options and pick the one that suits your needs the best.
So there's actually some decision-making to be done right off the bat.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, plugins installed. What's next?
Then you get to set up your org chart.
Setting it up.
This is where you put in all the players, your team members, their roles, and how everything fits together, that hierarchical structure.
And here's where things get interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just plugging in names and titles.
Yeah.
The article actually stresses clear, concise language, especially with those job titles.
They even recommend sticking to Australian terminology.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I thought was insightful. Making sure everyone in the organization, from the CEO down, understands who does what.
Now, that's helpful for internal clarity.
Yeah.
But wouldn't using Australian terms potentially alienate any international stakeholders or partners?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And it's something the article doesn't really address. It's a balancing act, for sure.
Yeah.
Clarity for your team, but you don't want to confuse external people.
Right.
Maybe a glossary or some kind of translation for those outside.
That's a good solution, like 2 versions of the chart.
Right.
One Aussie, one universal.
Exactly.
Okay, we've got the structure, the language sorted.
What's next?
What's next on this adventure?
Well, step 3 is all about aesthetics.
Ooh.
Don't just settle for a bland default look.
Right.
WordPress plugins let you customize the look.
So this is where we get to play with colors, fonts, all that fun stuff.
Exactly. Create a visually appealing chart that's easy on the eyes, reflects your company's branding.
So we're adding personality to the company's family portrait.
I like that.
Make it feel human, less corporate.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this beautiful, branded, easy-to-read org chart.
Yeah.
What do we do with it? Do we print it out, Frame it?
Not quite.
Yeah.
Step 4 is sharing your masterpiece with the organization.
Okay.
And WordPress makes this super easy.
Really? How easy are we talking?
Like copy and paste easy.
Wow.
Many plugins use a shortcode, a little snippet of code you insert onto any page you'll post on your website, and boom, your org chart just appears.
That's what I love about WordPress. It can sound intimidating.
Right.
But then they give you these simple tools.
Exact.
So the org chart's live on the website. What's the final step?
Step 5, and it's a crucial one. Maintenance.
Maintenance.
The article really emphasizes that an org chart is not a set it and forget it deal.
So I'm picturing our listener setting a calendar reminder to check in and update.
Yeah, exactly.
Things change. People get promoted, new teams, roles shift.
Right, and if those changes aren't reflected in the org chart, it becomes outdated.
Loses its value.
Exactly.
And all that hard work goes down the drain.
Yeah.
Okay, so we walked through those 5 steps from the article.
We did.
But I feel like there's more to this.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They wouldn't call it a deep dive if it were that simple, right?
Exactly.
So what else is there?
Well, the article goes beyond just the basics.
Okay.
They offer valuable tips to make sure your org chart is truly effective.
Okay, now we're talking.
That's what we'll delve into next.
Let's dive into those juicy details.
Let's do it. So one of the biggest things they say is keep it simple.
Simple.
Yeah, it's tempting to cram every single detail onto the chart.
Right.
But that can make it less effective.
It's like that saying, a cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind.
Huh? Right.
Maybe a cluttered org chart means a cluttered company.
Could be.
But seriously, they say stick to the essentials.
Yeah. Names,
Mm-hmm.
clear job titles,
Okay.
maybe a super short description of the key responsibilities.
So more of a high-level overview of who does what,
Right.
not a deep dive into how they do it.
Exactly.
Got it. What other tips did they have?
Well, they talked about choosing the right format.
Format.
Yeah, you know, the classic hierarchical pyramid.
One everyone uses.
Yeah, but they acknowledge that it's not always the best fit.
Right.
Like if a company has more fluid roles
Yeah.
or cross-functional teams,
Okay.
then a matrix or even a flat org chart might be better.
I could see that. Like with a tech startup where everyone wears multiple hats.
Exactly. And they actually suggest getting feedback from the team
Oh, interesting.
before finalizing the chart.
So it's not just about accuracy.
No.
It's about making sure everyone feels ownership.
Yeah.
That's smart. Like, hey, team, we're all in this together. What do you think?
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about visuals,
Yeah.
but the article brings up accessibility too.
Yes, especially in Australia.
With all the mobile internet use.
It's not just making it look good on a phone, though.
Right.
They talk about complying with accessibility standards for disabilities, too.
Like visual impairments.
Yes, things like alt text descriptions or making sure there's good color contrast.
So everyone in the organization can use it.
Exactly, no matter how they're accessing it.
And that ties back to keeping it simple, right?
It does.
How so?
A well-structured org chart that's clear and concise
Yeah.
is naturally more accessible.
Than one that's super cluttered.
Yeah, with too much information, jargon,
yeah.
or complex visuals.
So good design and accessibility go hand in hand.
They do.
Were there any other little nuggets of wisdom in the tips section?
Let me think.
Anything that really stood out?
One thing was the emphasis on consistency.
Consistent?
Yeah, using the same formatting, terminology, visual elements.
Okay.
So it looks professional and cohesive.
It's like a style guide, but for your org chart.
Exactly. And they talk about clear labels, too.
Labels for what?
For everything. Department names, job titles, reporting lines.
Seems obvious.
It does, but you'd be surprised how many I've seen where things aren't labeled properly.
It's like walking into a store with no aisle signs.
Exactly. You'd have no idea where to find anything.
Exactly. Okay, we've covered the steps, best practices, accessibility.
We have.
But I'm curious, beyond just practicality,
Yeah.
how do org charts fit into the bigger picture of a company's culture and operations?
That's a great question, and I think they can be so much more than just a static representation of hierarchy.
More than just who reports to who.
Right.
It's about how the whole organization works together.
Yeah, like a living, breathing system.
And the article kind of hints at that too.
It does. They suggest using the org chart to spark conversation
About.
roles, responsibilities, career paths.
So it's a tool for communication,
And development.
not just a dusty old document.
Exactly.
Imagine managers using it during meetings
Or one-on-ones.
to talk about career goals.
Right, growth opportunity.
It's taking something rigid and turning it into something dynamic.
Exactly. Shifting the focus from this is where you fit in to how can we work together.
I like that.
But there are pitfalls to avoid too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. What are some common mistakes?
One is not getting buy-in from leadership.
If they don't see the value,
It'll be a low priority.
right, like trying to build a house without the architect's approval.
Exactly. Get their support from the beginning.
Another challenge is keeping it updated.
Yes. Companies change constantly.
New hires, promotions, restructuring.
If the org chart doesn't reflect that, it's useless.
Right, it's like a map that shows all the old roads,
Exactly.
but not the new ones. You need a system to keep it updated.
You do. Or it's like a garden that you just let grow wild.
And speaking of things getting out of control,
Yeah.
another pitfall is information overload.
Too much information.
We talked about keeping it visually simple,
Right.
but that applies to the information too.
It does focus on the core elements.
Roles, reporting lines, responsibilities.
And leave the finer details for somewhere else.
It's like a roadmap. You want the highways and landmarks.
Right.
Not every single side street.
Perfect analogy. But beyond those pitfalls,
Yeah.
there's something even more interesting.
Oh, what's that?
The broader implications of visualizing your company structure.
Tell me more.
It's not just a diagram.
Uh-huh.
It's a representation of how power and information flow.
Right.
By creating this visual, you can gain insights.
Into the company culture.
Yeah, communication patterns.
Areas for improvement.
It's like holding up a mirror to the company.
And saying, let's take a good look at ourselves.
Exactly. And by doing that,
Yeah.
you can find ways to streamline things, improve communication, create a more efficient environment.
So the org chart helps shape the company's future.
It does, and that leads us to the article's closing question.
The one that leaves us thinking.
Yeah, they ask, how could visualizing your company's structure in a new way spark innovative ideas or solutions?
That is a good question. They're really challenging us to think outside the box.
They are.
What could a truly innovative org chart look like?
Well, imagine one that not only shows reporting lines, but highlights individual skills and expertise.
Okay.
This managers could find hidden talent.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Or build better teams.
By matching people with the right skills.
Exactly. It's like a built-in talent database.
I like it. What else?
What if it let employees give feedback?
On the company structure.
Yeah.
That's a bold move.
It would empower them to improve things.
It shows a lot of trust in your employees.
It does.
Any other out-of-the-box ideas?
What about using it for onboarding new hires? Let them explore different departments.
Learn about their colleagues.
Connect with mentors.
It would make onboarding way more engaging.
Right. It turns the org chart into a learning tool.
That's really cool.
It's about moving beyond the static, embracing interactivity and engagement.
So the org chart is a dynamic tool with tons of possibilities.
Endless possibilities.
I'm glad we dug deeper in all this.
Me too.
But before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to make sure our listener has some concrete takeaways.
Of course.
Some inspiration to get started.
Okay.
What are the most important things to remember? I think the biggest takeaway is that building an org chart on WordPress is way easier than it sounds.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, thanks to those plugins, you don't need to be a coding expert to make it look professional.
Exactly. And remember, the goal isn't just to make a chart.
Right.
It's about making something useful for your company.
Like we said, think about the why before the how.
Exactly.
What are you trying to achieve with this?
Right. Is it better communication?
Smoother operations.
Maybe legal compliance?
Once you know why you're doing it.
You can tailor it to fit your needs.
And don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Yeah.
The traditional pyramid is fine, but it's not the only way.
Try different formats, play with the design, get feedback from your team.
So everyone feels good about it.
Exactly.
It becomes a team effort.
Which makes sense for improving communication.
It all ties together.
It does, and remember to keep it updated.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Organizations are always changing.
New people, promotions, restructuring.
You gotta keep up with it.
Or it's useless.
Like that map with the old roads.
Haha. Exactly. And don't forget about accessibility.
Yeah, make sure everyone can use it.
No matter their abilities.
Or how they're accessing it.
Clear language.
Contrast.
Alt text. Mobile friendly.
Everyone should feel included.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the most exciting thing is the org chart can do so much more than just show hierarchy.
It's true.
It can start conversations.
Build collaboration.
Help you find talent.
Even drive innovation.
So to our listener, I hope you're feeling inspired to build something awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Remember those resources from Now Technology Systems.
Those are a great starting point.
And that thought-provoking question.
Yeah, how can you use the org chart to spark new ideas and solutions?
Let that be your guide as you go on this journey.
Because you might just discover
that the org chart can transform your company.
Not just represent it.
Until next time, keep diving deep.